Hi. I've been trying to print this part and not having very good luck. Now, I recently made some changes to my extruder setup, and I think I may have done something that is causing this failure. This is definitely an extruder problem. You can see that what's happening is there's sections where it prints fine, like right here, and then there's sections where it doesn't print fine, like down here. And you can see that it's just not extruding as much material. And you can see it in the layers too. Now, some layers look okay. Let's sit this down. And some layers look kind of like there's gaps where it was printing. And so here's another example of a really bad example of this, where it really started to flake out. First few layers are fine though, as you can see. So what usually causes this is a combination of things. I mean, it's an extruder problem. So anything that has to do with the extruder could be causing this problem. There could be filament in the hobbed bar, in the teeth, in between the teeth, which is reducing traction. There could be too much friction here at the gears. Maybe if this is resting against the motor too tightly, or maybe if this is rubbing against a bolt, like the bolt on the other side of here, or if they're smashed together too tight, that might be causing too much friction. As I can see here, that's not the problem because it can wiggle a little bit. So there's definitely not too much friction there. It could also be that the idler is too tight, so you might need to back off these screws here. It could also have something to do with the hot end too. Maybe if you're experiencing temperature fluctuations, there could be an issue with the thermistor. Maybe there's a loose connection, or maybe it's shorting out. So that could be causing maybe some temperature inconsistencies. So that could be a problem. But and it could also be that maybe the hot end isn't hot enough. If it's too cold, it could cause a lot of back pressure, which will make it more difficult for the extruder to push the filament through. So, and then also it could be that maybe the stepper motor doesn't have enough amperage, or maybe the stepper motor has too much amperage. More likely low amperage, but so what makes troubleshooting this a little difficult is that everything that I just mentioned is a balance. Like they all affect each other. You know, if the hot, like I said, if the hot end's too cold, it could cause more friction. But if there's more friction here, if there's more friction here and you increase the temperature of the hot end, it might apparently solve the problem, but now you just actually have things out of balance. So it's kind of a difficult thing to work on. But anyway, what I wanted to show you right now is that I have everything here preheated, and so one thing that you can do to try to help troubleshoot this problem is, when you have everything preheated, you can operate the extruder manually. So what I like to do is I like to grab onto some of the filament at the top, and then I will turn the big wheel with my hand, and be careful not to pinch yourself in between the two gears. And then you can actually, while you hold on to the filament, you can feel what's happening. So I can turn this and extrude some material. See, I'm turning the big wheel right now, the big gear, I mean, and you can see it's extruding. It looks like it's extruding just fine, but when I put one hand on the filament and hold on to it, and sometimes I can tug a little too to create some pressure to make it more difficult for it to pull it down. As I turn the big wheel, and you can see in the camera too, you can watch it move. As I turn the large gear, I keep calling it a big wheel, I can see that there's actually I mean, maybe not right now. Let me turn it a little faster. For one thing, I could feel little bits of friction as I turn this, and I don't know if you can tell, but I can see it. The filament is not moving down at a steady pace. Every time I turn this wheel, sometimes it moves quickly, sometimes it moves slowly. And like right there, I just turned it like twice, and it was real easy to spin the large gear, but the filament hardly moved. And here it goes again. And then it goes faster, and now it goes slower. Interesting, right? So, this tells me that the problem is probably with the hobbed bolt. Maybe there's filament like inside the crevices of the hobbed bolt, and I need to go in there and clean it out. Now, also what you can do here though is you could try tightening the idler and just keep repeating. You know, do a manual extrusion by just turning the large gear, and you can loosen these and try again, and you can adjust the idler until you're at a point where it doesn't seem to matter how tight or how loose it is. There still seems to be a problem here, and you can also wiggle this and make sure that there's a tiny bit of play in between the large gear and the small gear. And you can wiggle it this way a little too, because if you have it too tight going horizontally here, that can actually increase friction too. So I can see by wobbling it a little this way that it is a little bit loose, so that's good. Another thing that can cause problems here is if the center of the hobbed bolt isn't lined up with the center of the filament. So when I dismantle this, I'm going to take a look at that too. But and then also if the problem has to do with this being under amperaged, what you can do is you can try turning it up a little bit. There's a pot right here. There's a pot right there on the stepper controller, and you can try turning it up a little bit with a plastic screwdriver like this one. But if you turn it up and the motor starts getting really hot, then it's turned up too high. I mean, my stepper motors never get above 42 Celsius, and there's probably no reason for them to ever really get higher than 42 Celsius. If they're higher, they're probably getting too much amperage. If it's getting too much amperage, then your problem isn't with low amperage, it's something else. Another thing that you could do is you could try turning up your hot end by about maybe 5 degrees or so, 5 degrees above what you would normally print at, just to see if it makes any difference. If you're still having issues, then it's definitely not the heat of the hot end. But you can also use a digital thermometer to try to gauge the temperature. This is just a cheapie from Harbor Freight, Centec, and it was something like 20 bucks or something like that. But you can read the temperature. Now you can't get a good reading off of the brass part on the hot end, but it can at least give you a reference point as to where the temperature is at. So anyway, I mean, those are some ideas, and so I'm going to take this apart and see what's going on inside and try to get this thing fixed. Okay, I've got this taken apart, and I noticed pretty right away that I'm going to try to line this up. If you can see, first of all, when I opened this up, I checked and I made sure that the bearing here rolls smoothly, and it does. It rolls just fine, so that's not causing any extra friction. And then if you look down the hole here, now it's not off by much, but it kind of looks like the hobbed bolt isn't centered with the hole. It's kind of hard to show with the camera, but it looks to me like it's off-centered there, and that could definitely be causing a problem. Now, another thing I did is when I got this opened up is I turned the big wheel, and I can see that the hobbed bar is pretty clean. It doesn't look like there's too much filament trapped in there, maybe a little bit right there. So I'm going to go with a knife, and I'm going to try to clean that out a little bit, and then I'm going to make an adjustment to try to get the hobbed bolt moved over just a little bit towards the rear so that it lines up with the center of the hole. I realized that that I could set the camera on top of the RepRap to give myself two hands so that I could actually show you how I'm going through and cleaning this out. So I've got a little knife here. This is actually like a wood sculpting knife. You can see a little piece of filament just came out right there. Not very much at all. I seriously doubt that these little fragments of filament are causing any problems. I'm also not going to worry about these clogging the nozzle because this is just it's just filament, so it'll just heat up and melt. So I'm not worried about that. But see, I'm just going through, and so there definitely is some filament caught in these little grooves, but not very much. That's weird. What is causing that? Oh, that feels fine. It's just a stepper motor. So, I loosened this up too, by the way, so that's why it's all wobbly right now. But I actually think I'm going to leave it like that. I got it pretty much aligned towards the center of the hole, but because there's a little bit of wobble, I figured maybe the filament can sort of auto-align it. So, I'm going to give that a try and see how it goes. Anyway, I'm just going to go through and make sure that all these teeth are clean. Then I'll probably blow it out. I'll be back. Okay. I've got everything reassembled. I've got the printer preheated, and before I start printing anything, I decided to go ahead and do another manual run where I manually turn the large gear. You know, all the motors have to be off in order to do this, by the way. And I did the same test again. I've got the idler tightened up pretty tight, and I tried different amount of tension on the idler to try to verify what's going on here. And I noticed something interesting. I put a little piece of tape on here so that I could watch the where the bolt was in relation to where the amount of slippage was occurring. So as I was turning and holding onto the filament, watching it go down, I noticed that between here and here, it seemed to be slipping. Everywhere else, it seemed to have pretty good tension. And so right here, I can even feel that there's less tension on the wheel as I turn it, or on the large gear. So this is telling me actually that I think maybe that this top bar is wore out. I've had this printer for a while now. It's printed many pounds of filament, and so I think there's a chance that maybe the bolt is wore out. So I'm going to disassemble this again, and next time I'm going to actually take the whole bolt out, and I'm going to inspect it a little closer, maybe with a loupe, and I'll get back to you. Okay, guys, I have the hob bolt disassembled, and I put it under a 40x microscope. And I'm trying to hold the camera and the flashlight at the same time, so it's kind of jittery. Sorry about that. Maybe you could pause it to kind of get a look at the at what I see. I gotta be honest, I don't know if this is the problem, but it sort of looks like the grooves are sort of rounded off. Now you can see, like, if you look up in the top, on the top right, so the edges are kind of sharp, but down in the channel it looks like all of the edges, all the corners are sort of rounded off. I'm going to try to rotate this and set down the flashlight. Oh, actually, maybe that's enough light. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to try to... Well, this is going to be even more difficult, but... See how they look kind of rounded? Really flat through here. This might be where it was slipping the most. This is a Hyena, by the way, and it's been operating for about 2 years, so many pounds of filament have gone through this. So it looks pretty flat through here. Okay, now I'm going to show you a new Hyena, and this is technically a a newer model of Hyena, so it's going to look a little different. But what you can see in the new one, God, I really should get a rig to hold this, but sorry, or print one. It's so hard to hold this and get it lined up. Okay, see how sharp those edges are on a new one? Now, with this particular model of Hyena, you know, it has a flat section and then two really sharp sections, then a flat section, two really sharp sections. But you can see, though, that even on the flat section, at least the corners or the edges there are sharp. You know, they're not rounded off like the other bolt. Here, let me just try to do a close-up right here on the bolt. See if that works. Yeah, I can't really get a close-up shot on this. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to install a new bolt and see how it goes. Okay, I've got everything reassembled. Got the new bolt installed, and it's lined up pretty good, I think. And I've got everything locked down pretty good. Not a whole lot of wiggle here. There's a little bit of play in between the large gear and small gear, which I like. And everything's operating pretty smoothly here. Went ahead and printed new gears, new large gear, new small gear, since I was, you know, rebuilding the whole thing anyway. This bearing here is rolling smoothly. All the other bearings are rolling smoothly. Everything looks great at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and get this installed, get it heated up, and see how it does. Okay, I've got everything reassembled. I've got the idler tightened down, and I have the nozzle preheated. And I was just doing some testing here. And everything here feels pretty smooth. At this point, I think I'm ready to go ahead and try to print and see how it goes. So I'll record another video after it's done. Alright, so it started printing, and I'm printing something small just to do a test run. And so far it's looking pretty good. Now, like I showed you in the photo of the defective part, the problem is sort of intermittent. You know, it's not really a consistent type of problem. So I'm going to have to let this finish in order to see if it's actually successful or not. But so far, it looks really good, actually. So I hope it keeps up. And once it's done with this test piece, this is just a guidler. I'll move to the piece that I've been having troubles with, which is a bit larger. So I think that you know, the larger piece is more susceptible to the problem. But at this point, I mean, almost the entire extruder has been rebuilt, except for the stepper motor. So if there's any problems at this point, I mean, it must be something I've done, like maybe I didn't align that bolt as well as I thought I did, or something like that. But anyway, I'll see how this goes, and in the next video, I'll show you the finished part that I've been working on. So anyway, thanks a lot. Bye. Alright, so I'm printing the large piece, since the small test piece that I printed turned out just fine. Totally eliminated that problem I was having. And so I went ahead and moved to the larger piece that I've been having troubles with, and it looks just fine too. The reason why you can see like these wavy lines and stuff is because I only print one external layer. Doesn't make the part look as pretty, but they are definitely a lot more durable. And I can see that I'm having some other cosmetic issues over here and over here too, but that's a different problem to deal with, and I'll probably start working on that next. But at least it's producing usable parts now. And now I know that you know, if you were showing signs of the problem that I had, that it most likely wasn't a worn out hobbed bolt. I think that's probably pretty rare, and I'm actually pretty surprised. This is the first time I've seen it. I actually have an older printer here that still works just fine, so I'm a little surprised by that, but it definitely looks like what happened. You know, your problem might be something different, but I hope that by going through some of the troubleshooting steps that I went through, that it might help you with your problem. You know, maybe it's maybe the hot end wasn't hot enough, or maybe the idler was too tight, or maybe there's too much friction between the large gear and the small gear, or maybe the center of the hop bolt wasn't lined up with the hole in the extruder body. You know, there's definitely lots of possibilities. I hope I went through enough of them to help you out. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Bye.